Babylon, June 10th, 323 BC. The room is full of men with swords. They are arguing about who should rule the world. The arguments are loud. Some of the men are weeping, some are not. In the Mesopotamian summer, the heat outside reaches 40 degrees. In the palace of Nebuchadnezzar II, built 6 centuries before this moment, a body lies on a low bed in the center of the room. The body does not move. It does not speak. The men argue louder. Outside in the palace grounds, 2 factions of the same army have drawn weapons against each other. Inside, the argument continues. The body lies still. It has been 12 days since the illness began, hours since the physicians made their declaration. Here is the detail that should not be possible. It is June in Mesopotamia, and the body is not decomposing. In this heat, that is impossible for a body that is dead. The question is not whether the men in that room will divide the world. They will. The question is what the man lying in the center of it knows and what he can hear. His name is Alexander, Alexander III of Macedon, Alexander the Great. He was born in July 356 BC. He is 32 years old. In 11 years of continuous campaigning, he built an empire of 5 million square kilometers, stretching from Greece and Egypt in the west to the edges of northwestern India in the east. He was undefeated in every battle he ever fought. He toppled the Persian Empire, the largest political entity in the ancient world, in 3 engagements. He crossed the Hindu Kush in winter. He founded more than 20 cities. He designed supply chains that ran across 5,000 kilometers of hostile terrain. He managed armies of 50,000 men across a dozen languages and a dozen climates. He made no arrangement for what would happen when he died. When asked on his deathbed who should inherit everything, the empire, the armies, the cities, the treasury, the world, he gave an answer of 3 words. Toi kratis toi, to the strongest. Those 3 words triggered 42 years of war that killed millions of people and destroyed every structure he had spent his life building. This is how. He was tutored by Aristotle at the age of 13. The philosopher taught him medicine, philosophy, rhetoric, and the geography of a world that, at that point, very few Greeks had seen. At 20, Alexander became king of Macedon. By 25, he had destroyed the Persian Empire. By 30, he had reached the Hyphasis River in what is now Pakistan, the point where his army, after 8 years of continuous marching, refused to go further east. He turned back not because he had been defeated. He had never been defeated. He turned back because his men would not follow. He crossed the Gadrosian Desert on the return, a march so brutal it killed thousands from thirst and exposure. He lost more men in that desert than in some of his major battles. He reached Babylon in 323 BC with an army that had walked, fought, and bled across 3 continents. He was planning new campaigns, Arabia, possibly the Western Mediterranean. His mind was already on the next war. The plan he never made was the one for when the wars were over. The man who mapped the logistics of river crossings in Afghanistan, who negotiated simultaneously with Indian kings, Persian satraps, Greek city-states, and his own increasingly restless officers, that man never wrote down what should happen the day after his death. There was no named successor. There was no mechanism, no law, no document, no instruction. Babylon, May 29th, 323 BC. The fever begins. Day 1. He attends a banquet. He drinks heavily. Ancient sources suggest wine, a great deal of it. He goes to sleep. By morning, the fever is present. His physicians note it. It is not, in the beginning, alarming. Day 2. The fever intensifies. He bathes. He tries to sleep. He cannot. The fever does not break. Day 3. Abdominal pain begins. He is moved to a cooler room near the palace pool. Days 4 through 7. The fever continues. He begins to lose the ability to move his limbs. The paralysis starts in his extremities, his hands, his feet, and moves upward through his body. He is carried to his troops so they can see him. He cannot speak easily. He raises his hand. He meets their eyes. He says nothing, or almost nothing. His men file past him in silence. Days 8 through 11, the paralysis progresses. His voice is gone. He cannot move his limbs. He cannot sit up without assistance. Every ancient source that describes these days notes the same detail. His mind is completely clear. He is aware. He recognizes people. His eyes follow movement in the room. He is, by every account, fully conscious inside a body that has stopped responding to him. Day 12, June 10th, 323 BC. His physicians can no longer detect breathing. His chest does not visibly rise. There is no detectable pulse by the methods available to ancient medicine. They declare him dead. His body is placed in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. The summer heat outside is extreme. His body does not decompose. In 2019, Dr. Catherine Hall of the Dunedin School of Medicine at the University of Otago published a paper in the Ancient History Bulletin proposing a diagnosis that accounts for every symptom in the ancient record and for the 6 days that followed. Her diagnosis? Guillain-Barré Syndrome. GBS is a rare autoimmune disorder in which the body's immune system attacks the peripheral nervous system. It causes progressive, symmetrical, ascending paralysis, beginning in the extremities and moving upward through the body. It can cause complete external paralysis while leaving cognitive function entirely intact. A patient in severe GBS may be fully conscious and aware while unable to move any voluntary muscle, including the muscles required for visible breathing. In the ancient world, death was determined by breath, not pulse, not brain activity. Breath. Visible, audible, detectable breath. A body in total paralysis, breathing at a rate too shallow to detect without instruments that would not exist for 2,000 years, was clinically indistinguishable from a corpse. Dr. Hall's conclusion, published in a peer-reviewed academic journal: his death may be the most famous case of pseudo-thanatos, or false diagnosis of death, ever recorded. The 6 days of non-decomposition are explained by the same mechanism. A body in deep paralysis has dramatically reduced metabolic activity and drastically reduced oxygen consumption. The tissue does not begin to die immediately. The body did not decompose because Alexander was not dead. If this theory is correct, and it accounts for every documented symptom in a way no other proposed cause does, then the following is what happened next. Alexander was paralyzed. He could not move. He could not speak. He could not signal his physicians, his generals, his servants, or anyone else in the room. He had been declared dead. His body lay in the Babylonian heat, and he could hear everything. What he heard was the sound of everything he had built being divided. The senior commanders convene in the palace within hours of the declaration. The immediate question is not grief, it is succession. Alexander has no legitimate adult heir. His wife Roxana is pregnant, but the child, if it survives, if it is male, is not yet born. His half-brother, Philip Aridius, has a cognitive disability and has never governed anything. His mother, Olympias, is in Macedonia, thousands of kilometers away. There is no mechanism. There is no law. There is no plan. Perdiccas, one of Alexander's most senior cavalry commanders, possibly holding Alexander's signet ring, which Alexander may have passed to him in his final lucid hours, proposes waiting for Roxana's child. If the child is male, he will be king. A regent council will govern until the boy comes of age. It is the most legally defensible position available. The infantry reject it immediately. They want a king now, a visible king, a king they can point to. They support Philip Aridius. He is a son of Philip II. He has Macedonian blood. The fact that he cannot govern is, to the infantry, a secondary concern. The cavalry, under Perdiccas, hold to the unborn child. The infantry, under a general named Meleager, hold to Philip Aridius. Two factions of the same army, men who crossed the Hindu Kush together, who stood in the same formations at Gaugamela, who drank from the same rivers in India, draw weapons against each other inside the palace grounds. Ptolemy says little publicly. He is already doing the mathematics. Egypt is the wealthiest province in the empire. It is surrounded by desert on 3 sides and sea on the 4th. It is defensible. It is rich. It is, of all the territories in the empire, the one most likely to sustain an independent kingdom. Antigonus, who has been governing Greater Phrygia in Asia Minor throughout Alexander's eastern campaigns, is not in Babylon at all. He does not need to be. He already controls the territory he wants. Outside the palace, 2 armies are on the edge of killing each other. Inside, in the center of the room where the arguments are loudest, a body lies motionless in the heat. The impasse between the cavalry and infantry factions holds for 2 days. Then a compromise is reached, not from principle, but because both sides recognize that a civil war fought now, in this city, over this body, will leave nothing for anyone to inherit. The agreement gives Philip Aridius the nominal title of king to satisfy the infantry. It also reserves a co-kingship for Roxana's unborn child to satisfy Perdiccas and the cavalry. It creates a regent council to govern in the name of both nominal kings. The arrangement satisfies no one. It is a starting position. The partition of the actual empire follows immediately. The Partition of Babylon. The document that divides the world Alexander built in 11 years takes approximately 96 hours to negotiate and sign. Perdiccas receives the regency, nominal authority over the empire as a whole, guardian of the 2 kings. Ptolemy receives Egypt. He requested it specifically, over the objections of several other commanders who understood exactly why he wanted it. Antipater, who has commanded Macedonia and Greece throughout Alexander's campaigns and already has his own army, retains his position in Macedonia, paired with a general named Craterus. Lysimachus receives Thrace. Antigonus receives Greater Phrygia, Lycia, and Pamphylia. Eumenes, a Greek from Cardia, the only non-Macedonian among the senior commanders, Alexander's personal secretary, a man who has spent the entire campaign behind a desk and who will turn out to be one of the finest field generals of his generation, receives Cappadocia. Seleucus, who has served as commander of the elite companion cavalry, will eventually receive Babylonia, the province they are standing in at the moment they sign the document. Each man who signs the Partition of Babylon already knows it will not hold. Each man already knows what he intends to do when it fails. The document is not a peace. It is an acknowledgement of the current balance of forces, signed by men who are already calculating how to alter it. On day 6, Alexander's body begins to decompose. His physicians realize their error. The embalmers are called. Alexander the Great, paralyzed, conscious, unable to draw breath as the muscles of his chest cease to function, dies by respiratory failure, slowly, in the Babylonian heat, in an emptying room. He is 32 years old. His actual death, according to Dr. Hall's analysis, occurs around June 16th, 323 BC, 6 days after his physicians declared him dead, 6 days after the negotiations began, 6 days after the armies drew weapons against each other over his body. He heard all of it. If the theory is correct, he heard every word. Stop here for a moment. The Guillain-Barré hypothesis, published in a peer-reviewed academic journal, advanced by a credentialed medical historian, accounting for every symptom documented in ancient sources in a way that no other proposed diagnosis does, suggests the following sequence of events. The most powerful man in the ancient world lay completely paralyzed, breathing too shallowly for his physicians to detect, for 12 days. On day 12, he was declared dead. His body was placed in a room in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. The summer heat outside was extreme. For 6 days after his death was declared, his body did not decompose, because he was not dead. He was paralyzed. He was conscious. He was aware. He had conquered the Persian Empire. He had crossed the Hindu Kush in winter with 50,000 men. He had stood at the edge of the known world and turned back only when his army refused to follow. He had planned supply chains across 5,000 kilometers of hostile terrain. He had designed cities, negotiated with kings, managed armies across a dozen languages. He could not move a finger. He could not make a sound. He could not prevent his own physicians from calling in the embalmers. He heard Perdiccas argue for the unborn child. He heard Meleager argue for Philip Aridaeus. He heard the cavalry and the infantry draw weapons against each other. He heard Ptolemy request Egypt, quietly, deliberately, knowing exactly what he was doing. He heard the Partition of Babylon negotiated and signed. He heard the names of the men who would receive the territories he had spent 11 years taking. He heard the embalmers being summoned. He could not move a finger. He had conquered the world. He could not prevent his own physicians from declaring him dead while he was still listening. What happened next took 42 years. It killed millions of people, and it was already written in the room where his body lay. The Partition of Babylon holds for approximately 2 years. In 321 BC, Perdiccas invades Egypt to assert central authority over Ptolemy. He cannot cross the Nile. His own officers, generals who served under Alexander, men who followed him across 3 continents, assassinate him in his tent. The first regent of Alexander's empire is killed by his own staff 2 years after Alexander's death. The second partition, negotiated at Triparadisus in 321 BC, redistributes the pieces. Antipater takes the regency. Seleucus, who has been maneuvering carefully throughout, receives Babylonia. The empire continues to fracture. Philip Aridaeus, the king the infantry demanded, the man whose blood gave the whole arrangement legitimacy, is murdered in 317 BC by Olympias. Alexander's mother, operating from Macedonia, uses Philip's death as a power move. She overreaches. She is captured by Cassander, the son of Antipater, a man who hated Alexander personally and who will spend a decade dismantling everything Alexander built. Olympias is executed in 316 BC. Alexander IV. Alexander's son by Roxana, born after his father's death, the child whose existence was the justification for the entire regency structure, is murdered in 311 BC. He is a child of approximately 12 years. Cassander orders the killing. The Argead dynasty, which had ruled Macedonia for centuries before Philip II, before Alexander, before any of this, ends with a child's death, ordered by one of Alexander's own generals in the kingdom Alexander's father built. Antigonus, the oldest of the successors, the most ambitious, the most persistent, spends 20 years trying to reunify the empire under his own authority. He comes closer than any of the others. At the Battle of Ipsus in 301 BC, the remaining successor kingdoms unite against him. He is killed in the fighting. He is 81 years old, still in armor, still fighting. His son Demetrius survives and continues the dynasty. The Antigonid line will rule Macedonia until the Romans end it in 168 BC. Ptolemy's masterstroke is not military, it is logistical. When Alexander's body is finally prepared for transport from Babylon to Macedonia, a procession of extraordinary ceremonial weight, a golden hearse, a cortege that took 2 years to prepare, Ptolemy intercepts it in Syria. He diverts the body to Egypt. He builds a magnificent tomb in Alexandria, the city Alexander founded and named after himself. By possessing Alexander's body, Ptolemy claims a legitimacy that no document, no partition, no battle can fully provide. He is the guardian of Alexander. He is the inheritor of Alexander. Julius Caesar visits the tomb 250 years after Alexander's death and weeps. Augustus Caesar visits and accidentally breaks Alexander's nose while reaching down to place a wreath. The last recorded visit is by the Roman Emperor Caracalla in 215 AD. Then, silence. The final accounting. The wars between Alexander's successors run from 323 BC to 281 BC, 42 years. The Ptolemaic kingdom, built by the man who quietly asked for Egypt at the partition meeting, lasts until 30 BC, 293 years. It ends with the death of Cleopatra, the last of Ptolemy's line. absorbed into the Roman Empire. The Seleucid Empire lasts until 63 BC. The Antigonid Kingdom of Macedonia lasts until 168 BC, ended by Rome at the Battle of Pydna. The empire Alexander built in 11 years generates 293 years of successor conflict between the men who divided it in 96 hours. Sometime in the 3rd or 4th century AD, the tomb disappears. One of the most visited sites in the ancient world, the final resting place of the man who conquered everything from Greece to India, visited by 2 Roman emperors and wept over by Julius Caesar, goes missing in a city that has been continuously inhabited for more than 2,000 years. Alexandria has been excavated systematically for 150 years. The tomb has not been found. There have been dozens of candidate sites. Archaeological missions from Greece, Egypt, the United States, Italy, none of them have produced the tomb. The generals who divided Alexander's empire at the Partition of Babylon have documented deaths. They have known burial sites. Their dynasties lasted centuries and left records. Ptolemy died in 283 BC and is buried in Egypt. Seleucus was assassinated in 281 BC. Antipater died in Macedonia in 319 BC. Lysimachus was killed in battle in 281 BC. Each of the men who negotiated Alexander's empire away from him, piece by piece, in the room where his paralyzed body lay. Each of those men has a more certain place in the historical record than Alexander himself. The man at the center of all of it, the reason any of them had armies, any of them had provinces, any of them had anything worth dividing, is somewhere under a modern city, or somewhere else entirely. No one knows which. Alexandria, Egypt, today. A city of 5 million people, built on and around and over the ruins of the city Alexander founded in 331 BC, and named after himself. It is one of more than 20 cities he named Alexandria. This one, on the Egyptian coast between the Mediterranean and Lake Mareotis, became the greatest of them. It housed the Library of Alexandria, the largest collection of written knowledge in the ancient world. It housed the Mouseion, the institution from which the word museum derives. It became the intellectual capital of the Hellenistic world, the world that existed because Alexander existed, the world that his successors built from the pieces of the empire they divided in Babylon. Somewhere beneath it, under the streets and the buildings and the 2,000 years of accumulated city, a tomb. Once the most visited site in the ancient world, now unknown. He built an empire of 5 million square kilometers in 11 years. He made no plan for the day after his death. What followed was 42 years of war, 3 centuries of successor conflict, and the slow dissolution of everything he had built into the kingdoms that eventually became the world Rome inherited. The cities he named are still named. The trade routes he opened are still open. The legal and administrative systems his successors built shaped the Eastern Mediterranean for centuries after the last Macedonian king died. The language, Greek, the language of Alexander's court, the language of the Partition of Babylon, the language that spread from Alexandria across the ancient world, became the language of the New Testament, the language of early Christian theology, the language in which the intellectual inheritance of antiquity was preserved and transmitted. He built all of it in 11 years. He made 3 words of provision for what would happen when he was gone. The 3 words killed millions of people. And the man himself, paralyzed, conscious, hearing everything, unable to move a finger, is still missing. No one knows where he is.